Hello, good morning and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu newspaper analysis of 2nd July 2024. Before I begin the discussion, a very important announcement. Congratulations to all the students who have cleared the prelims examination which was conducted last month by the UPSC. If you want to clear the mains examination, we have curated a Conquer Mains 2024 initiative, a quality enrichment program for all of you. The USPs of this particular program are, starting yesterday, we have started with the Indian economic class, and thereafter for the next 59 days, that is totally for 60 days, the classes will be conducted from 10 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. That is for 1.5 hours. In this 1.5 hours, the subject-specific faculties will be taking up the important current affairs and related to that, the static concepts which are required for you to ace the upcoming mains examination. And whatever topics are covered, the detailed notes of these particular topics will be provided to you. And these classes for 60 days put together totally, you'll be getting 90 hours of classes, and the current affairs till the month of August 2024, because the exams are there in the month of September. The current affairs till August 2024 will be covered. And to evaluate your preparation, to assess whether you are reading correctly, are you able to write correctly, are you able to score very good number of marks, every Sunday we will have a test paper. We will evaluate and give a feedback to you. All of these are the unique or the USPs of this particular program. And to provide you the basic idea as to what is being covered, how it is being covered, we have decided to provide the first 6 classes of Conquer Mains 2024 free of a cost on our YouTube channel. Yesterday, that is 1st of July, the Indian economy 5 topics were covered, and the person who covered those topics was me only. Today, the class will be taken by geography by Mukesh sir for Indian geography. Tomorrow, science and technology will be taken by Himabindu ma'am. Thereafter, history by Abhishek sir, polity by Sarmat sir, and on Saturday, that is the 6th of July, IR class will be taken by Chetan sir. Do not miss out these classes. These classes will be held on YouTube channel from 10 p.m. starting yesterday till the end of the week, that is Saturday. All you need to do is hit the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that whenever the classes will go live, you will be given the intimation. And those students who have cleared the prelims and they want to take up this particular program, here is a good news for all of you. This program will be made available to you at a price of 999 rupees. Yes, you heard it right, at a price of 999 rupees. All you need to do is check the link in the description. There will be a form. Fill out the form. We will ensure that this program will be made available to you at the price of 999 rupees. So with this caveat, let's look at the list of the topics that I'll be covering in today's discussion. I've taken totally 8 topics, and these topics are from Hindu International Edition. The first topic will be regarding an article, editorial that has been written regarding the issue of unemployment as well as other macroeconomic issues criticizing Government of India. And when we discuss, let's put both the sides of the argument rather than only looking at what has been provided in the article. Second is a tool to ensure the voter anonymity. This is an article regarding the GS paper 1 polity. Third article, the 16th Finance Commission, the text and context page. Very important, by the way. Lot of articles which come in the text and context page are relevant for UPSC. So agenda for the 16th Finance Commission, we will have a look at it. June GST data. Engineer Rashid to take oath as MP. What are the constitutional provisions related to this article? What are the other points that you need to remember? We will have a look at it. Project Nexus, which has been signed very recently by RBI. CEPA, India wants Korea to drop tariffs. Why? What is the issue? And finally, the 8th article, UCCN Conference has begun in Portugal. Certain factual information is required from this article for the prelims examination. We'll have a look at it. So this is the list of totally the 8 articles that I'll be covering. And in the process of covering these articles, I will also give you one assignment. And because now the mains examination is coming up, for those students, this assignment will be helpful. And those who are preparing for the next year's examination, you generally ignore writing answers. This will help you also. So I'll give you one assignment in the process of discussion of these 8 articles. Let's begin. The first article, which is written by Mr. Subramanian Swamy, the title is Glossing Over Unemployment, It's a High Electoral Price. Now, before I start discussing what are the important points given in the article, you must see that there are certain lines which have been highlighted in all the articles that I'm going to cover today. In these, the newspaper clippings, certain lines are highlighted. Some of you will feel that, okay, sir, is the newspaper published like this? In my newspaper, there is no highlighting. Am I missing something? Are you getting a different newspaper? Absolutely no. What I've done for your benefit, if you want to revise these articles after the class is over or over a period of time, what are the important points mentioned in the article? I've highlighted in all the 8 articles. You can use these as a pointers to revise later. Now, with that particular caveat, let me start. What are the areas? What are the concerns? What are the points raised in this article? Point number 1. The author says the number of people who are joining the labor force in search of jobs is increasing in India. The number of people who are joining in search of jobs is actually increasing. Although the number is given in the article, don't by heart it. I'll give you a universal number. According to economic survey, annually more than 11 million people join the labor force in India. And when you say join the labor force, what does it actually mean? Annually, to the existing working population in India, existing population which is working as well as searching for the jobs, 11 million people join this number. And it is imperative, it is very important for the government to ensure that these people are getting access to the wage opportunities or let's say job opportunities in the market. Why is it needed? It is needed in order to achieve the goal of increasing the manufacturing, to make Indian economy worth $5 trillion and over a period of time to ensure that India will become a developed country. In fact, if you're listening to the various speeches given by Finance Minister, the Prime Minister and other ministers as well, one parameter that they generally quote is that they want Indian economy to become a developed country by the time we achieve or we have 100 years of independence. That is by 2047. Whether we are moving towards the path, whether we will be able to achieve that, it's a different discussion altogether. But argument is simple. From 1 year to next year, millions of people are joining the workforce, are joining the labor force. They are searching for jobs. And on the other side, we are able to achieve high GDP growth rates. For example, various reports published recently have cited that India is going to achieve a GDP growth rate of 8%. And automatically what we expect is, with higher GDP growth rate, the amount of jobs or the number of jobs which have generated should also increase. But in recent times, what has been the concern? The concern has been that no doubt the unemployment rate is at a lower level, but the number of jobs which are generated are not matching the GDP growth rate. The kind of jobs which are getting generated in the economy, the quality of the jobs, there is a concern regarding that. As a result of this, the author says that there is a concentration of income as well as wealth. And as such, this argument of concentration of income as well as wealth, it's nothing new in the context of India. Couple of months ago, there was a report published which spoke about huge amount of income inequality, which highlighted huge amount of wealth inequality. And not just that, very recently also, there have been discussions regarding the huge gender wage gaps or gender disparities, wage disparities or income disparities that are existing in India. So argument here is, on one side we are able to achieve higher GDP growth rate, but on the other side the income generation is not very high. The growth in the jobs is not very high. And this is actually leading to not inclusive growth, rather it is including to exclusive growth. And that's the reason the author mentions one more key term that I'm pretty sure you must have come across in the last 1 year, is that Indian economy is experiencing a K-shaped recovery. All of these terms are mentioned in the article. Please be very careful. Indian economy is experiencing a K-shaped recovery. What do you understand by the term K-shaped recovery? In case of K-shaped recovery, you will observe that certain parts of economy will perform very well and other parts of the economy do not perform well. And as a result of this, the inequality that is already existing will start increasing. So this is one set of argument given in the article. And second set of argument is, whatever growth has been achieved, there are certain concerns regarding how we are measuring the growth itself. How are we measuring growth? Various experts, economic experts have raised a concern saying that the way we are measuring GDP in case of India, there is a problem. In fact, in the article, this is also mentioned. And not just this. In the last couple of years, whatever growth rate we have been able to achieve, the author says it is because of the investment or the expenditure incurred by the government. Understand this. It is because of the government expenditure. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, how is that possible? How can Government of India's expenditure drive the growth? Understand this carefully. The government will borrow from the market, and whatever money they have borrowed, let's say they will use this money to incur in the form of, let's say, investment expenditure. Will spend money on manufacturing, in providing goods or services in the market, or on roads, etc. So if you assume this kind of an event, or if you assume this kind of a flow in the economy, the borrowings will start increasing, expenditure of the government will start increasing, and because we measure GDP using expenditure method, government expenditure will drive the GDP growth rate. But the problem here is, when this kind of a government expenditure driven growth is observed, and if the demand is absent in the market, if the demand is not growing at a faster pace in the market, this kind of a growth is not sustainable. This kind of a growth is not at all sustainable. In fact, couple of months ago, when the GDP data was published by the authorities, there was a very important article in Hindu newspaper itself, which spoke about having high GDP growth rate without having sufficient demand growth rate or the higher demand growing in the economy. So this is one more very important point mentioned in the article. And the author basically says, if the Government of India needs to ensure that all of these issues are addressed, although there's a political argument here. Political argument says, because Government of India ignored the employment situation in rural part of India. Government of India ignored other macroeconomic parameters which affect the daily or the common, let's say the lives of the common man. This was one of the reasons why the author says is the outcome, or this was one of the reasons why the political party was not able to get the majority or the very high number of seats in the Lok Sabha elections. But you do not worry, let's not make it political. So these are one set of arguments. But on the other side, what are the counter arguments? Rather than having only one side of the argument, better have both the sides of the argument. Is it true? All of these particular points which have been mentioned, are they correct? What is the viewpoint of Government of India? Government of India as well as the supporters of the government, please understand, they are of the argument that no, Indian economy is not experiencing a K-shaped recovery. And to prove that particular issue and to prove that point, they mention, look at the per capita income of India. The per capita income of India has more than doubled in the last 10 years. That is one factor. Second, look at the number of jobs which have been generated, and you can look at the data of EPFO to get the outcome. The EPFO data clearly shows that the number of jobs which have been generated have increased over a period of time. Third one, India's GDP number has increased over a period of time. We are one of the largest economies in the global market. Government of India wants to make it as a third largest economy in the next couple of years. But more importantly, they also argue that India's basically the GDP growth rate, India's GDP growth rate is one of the, it's a highest. It was one of the highest. It has become the highest now. And not only this, if you look at the recent data, the household consumption expenditure survey data, the household expenditure on food as well as non-food have increased. If you look at the multi-dimensional poverty index data published by the Niti Aayog, it states that the number of poor people in case of India has decreased. Very recently, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation also highlighted this point. It has stated that the number of poor people in India has decreased by 10 percentage points to 15% as per the latest data or as per the latest estimates. So these are the arguments which are given by the government of India in the context of, let's say, supporting the situation of Indian economy. So this is the very important article which talks about inclusive growth, K-shaped recovery, employment situation in India, right? The expenditure incurred by the government which is driving the growth, etc. So regarding this, I have given a previous year question. Is it relevant? Whatever we have discussed, is it relevant? Have a look at the question here. Is inclusive growth possible in a market economy? This question was asked in 2022 itself. State the significance of financial inclusion in achieving economic growth in India. Can we achieve inclusive growth in a market economy? Of course, yes, we can promote and achieve inclusive growth in the market economy. In fact, post 1991, no doubt Government of India has implemented the reforms. The LPG reforms, which has opened up the Indian economy, which is more of an open economy now. But at the same point of time, in the 11th 5-year plan as well as the 12th 5-year plan, Government of India has implemented the model of inclusive growth. Have we achieved inclusive growth? Again, the argument is no, we are yet to achieve inclusive growth. But you simply cannot deny and state that in a market economy, because there is capitalism, you cannot simply say that we will not be able to achieve inclusive growth. Reason being, the government policies, no doubt, even in capitalism, the government policies as well as certain initiatives or the measures which are taken by the private sector. For example, let's say corporate social responsibility. Don't you think government policies along with certain initiatives of the private sector will drive the Indian economy towards inclusive growth? Of course, yes. So that is the argument here. Inclusion, what is the significance of financial inclusion in achieving economic growth in India? So this question was asked in 2022. Like I told you earlier, this is your assignment. Many of you are appearing for the upcoming mains examination, practice this. And those who are preparing for the next year, you generally ignore answer writing. Do not do that. Practice. Start practicing from today. So for you, the assignment will be India faces the unemployment as well as the unemployability issue. Right? Have a look at this. India faces unemployment as well as unemployability issues. Elaborate in 150 words. And not just this, I will give you one more assignment. 2 assignments for you. Second assignment is, I have taken an editorial which appeared in Business Line. Again, today's newspaper. The article speaks about the legal guarantee for MSP. Again, now the question will be, what are the pros as well as the cons? What are the advantages as well as the concerns regarding legal guarantee which is being demanded by farmers? It was there last year, and even before that also it was there in the discussion. In fact, Government of India set up a committee to review the concept of legalization of MSP, etc. So now your second assignment will be discuss the pros and cons of legally guaranteed MSP. These are the 2 questions that I've given to you, and for one question I've directly given a source to you. Read the article. and do let me know tomorrow, right? Let me know in the comment section whether you are able to write the answers or not. If not, I will give you a model answer in my next class. So this is the two assignments. Now let me go to the next article. Second article, a tool to ensure voter anonymity. Before I discuss this article, let me give you one interesting event that happened in 2014 Lok Sabha elections. In one of the polling booths in Madhya Pradesh, just before certain time, but just before minutes of close of voting, that generally is at 6 p.m., the electronic voting machine malfunctioned. The EVM stopped functioning. And within minutes, after certain number of minutes, the voting will be closed. But there was one voter who was yet to cast the vote. Now that was the difficulty. For one voter, they arranged a new electronic voting machine. They arranged a new setup. And only one voter, 10 minutes before the closure, that is at 5:50 p.m., just one voter cast the vote. Now that led to certain concern. What is the concern? According to various rules which is followed by Election Commission of India, that is election rules of 1961, the Election Commission of India is the authority which will protect the privacy of the voters, which will protect the sanctity of the privacy of the voters. There are certain rules. For example, there is a rule 56, rule 59. Under these particular rules, imagine earlier example, if you are voting in a paper, that is a ballot paper, and if the ballot paper is marked with certain symbol, it is marked with certain note, etc., then the returning officer has every right to reject the ballot paper. This was done in order to ensure that the voter, when they vote for a particular political party, they will not be identified. For example, let's say tomorrow you go in the elections, cast a vote. If I am contesting, although I am not going to contest, imagine if I am contesting, there should not be any way for me to identify which person has voted in favor of me, which person has voted, let's say, for other contestants. And if I am elected, and if I know who has voted, I will make certain policies, I will be in favor of them. And if I know who have not voted for me, I will basically not help them at all. Despite I am representing all of these particular, let's say, sections of the society or that particular region, I will try to, let's say, take certain revenge. I will try to exact revenge against the people who have not voted in my favor. So to protect the voters' sanctity, or let's say privacy of the voters, there are certain rules. Under one of the rules, if the ballot paper is marked with something, the returning officer can reject it. In another rule, whenever you count these particular ballot papers, earlier whenever you used to count these ballot papers, they used to simply mix these ballot papers, so that you will not be able to find out from which booth how many ballot papers have come, and within these ballot papers how many people have voted for which political party or which candidate, to be very specific. So these kind of rules were existing earlier, and even today they are there. But the problem is, with the introduction of electronic voting machine, with the introduction of EVM, it is becoming difficult now. What is the difficulty? In case of EVMs now, booth-wise, how many voters have voted for which party, you can find out. And that became a point of contention very, very recently, when one of the let's say members, or let's say one of the elected member stated that if certain people from certain communities will come to their home or his home, he will entertain them. He will give them tea, he will give them chai, biscuit, etc. But he will not do any work for them. He will not be entertaining any kind of request from their side. This led to certain discussion regarding whether the member is a representative of all the sections of the society, all the members, or particular members who have voted in the favor of the particular member. And that is where the article discusses a concept called as the totalizer. I'm pretty sure you have come across this idea. There is a concept, or there is a machine called as a totalizer. The idea for totalizer was proposed back in the year 2008. It was proposed back in the year 2008 by Election Commission of India. This was developed by the Bharat Electronics Limited as well as the Electronic Corporation of India, BEL and ECI, the entities which are involved in production or manufacturing of electronic voting machines. So the model of totalizer was proposed, and what would happen in a totalizer? The EVMs of, let's say, 14 polling booths, 14 polling booths would be connected together, and at the press of one button in these particular 14 polling booths, how many votes have been cast and how many votes have gone to which part of the or which political party, that information will be provided. This is basically the concept of totalizer. So Election Commission of India proposed this. It was initially accepted by certain political parties, and later Government of India was opposed to this, and many other political parties were also opposed to it. There was a public interest litigation, or even that is there in the Supreme Court of India. So argument here is, if the totalizer machine is installed, one, booth-wise, individually the booth-wise, how much polling is going to take place, which party is going to which party is getting how many votes, that information will not be available. Rather, all of these 14 polling booths, the complete or the total information will be made available to the political parties. That is the reason why totalizer is being promoted. Even Election Commission of India is in favor of the totalizer machine, and the Law Commission in 2015, Law Commission in its report also supported introduction of totalizer machine. Having said so, even today we have not implemented, although we tried out in certain parts of elections, in by-elections we tried out the totalizer machines. We have not implemented the totalizer machines across India. Why is it so? The Election Commission of India says Government of India must amend the election rules of 1961. Only and only when the amendment is done, changes are done in the election rules, Election Commission of India will have the powers to implement the totalizer machine. But on the other side, Government of India says we have certain concerns. There was a panel also set up which studied and which did not accept the idea of a totalizer machine. Their arguments are simple. First one, if totalizer machines are implemented or totalizer as a concept is implemented, there might be a data breach. The first concern that they have raised is there might be a data breach. Second one, if this is implemented, the booth-wise information will not be available to us. We want booth-wise information. We want booth-wise information. Why? Understand the argument here. The political parties say that if I know in which booth I am getting how many votes, in which booth the voters are favoring me, in which booth the voters are against me and are favoring other political parties, according to that I can go for implementation of developmental activities. For example, let's say there is a particular booth, a certain ward, I have implemented certain policies there. The voters in this ward are happy with that and they will vote in favor of me. So now I as an elected candidate know that, okay, I should replicate the same kind of policies in other wards also, other booths areas as well, so that other people will also get benefit. And if the policies are not acceptable to the voters, they will vote against me. As a result of that, now I have a learning, I have learned a lesson that such policies are not going to work for the people. So the region-wise management, booth-wise management or booth management can be conducted in a much efficient manner if I know in which ward or in which booth I am favored and in which booth the voters are against me. And this is the reason why the political parties, many of these political parties have been opposed to the model of a totalizer. But in the article, author says that there is a need to protect the identity of the voters. There is a need to protect the, let's say, the safety or the identity of the voters. Reason being, there have been multiple instances where the elected candidates have threatened certain sections of the voters. They have threatened that if they lose elections, they will face consequences. And if they anyhow win the elections, they will find out which part or which section of the society has not voted in their favor, and they will take retaliatory measures against such voters. So in order to protect the sanctity of the voters, sanctity or the privacy of the voters, the article argues in the favor of totalizer. So these are certain important points mentioned in the article. Let me go to the third article. What is the agenda for the 16th Finance Commission? The tenure of the 15th Finance Commission is going on now. That is, 15th Finance Commission, the recommendations are being implemented from 2021 to 2026. And 16th Finance Commission has been appointed. It has been set up. The recommendations are yet to be provided. It has been set up. Mr. Arvind Panigaria has been appointed as the chairperson or the chairman of the 16th Finance Commission. And very recently, that is day for yesterday itself, Mr. Arvind Panigaria, in one of the speeches, mentioned that we should have a centralized database. I repeat, we should have a centralized database of the previous Finance Commission recommendations. And the use of the centralized database will be for the future policy making. In fact, he argued that many of the people or experts who are part of the Finance Commission, they will make lot of notes. They'll prepare a lot of proposals. And these proposals will remain in the form of Excel sheet in their respective laptops. And once the Finance Commission is disbanded or the tenure is over, they will take their laptop, go home, and all of this particular precious data is lost. That's the reason he recommended that we should have a centralized database. Now come back to the point here. What is the article talking about? The article talks about what should be the focus area of 16th Finance Commission, specifically targeting one area, that is the local bodies. It is not talking about the central state finance commission, the tax devolution or central state population criteria, etc. Absolutely no. It talks about only one area, that is financing local bodies. Why this is so important? Listen to me very carefully. In the year 2022, World Bank published a report. And in that particular report, they mentioned something very, very important regarding India. In India, the report says by 2030, around 600 million people will be residing. The population will be around 600 million people, and out of that, 40% of it will be residing in cities. By 2030, around 40% of the population will reside in the cities. And this particular population which will reside in the cities will require lot of infrastructure support. Again, don't worry about this particular population. Don't worry about this. Focus on this number. 40% of the population will reside. Okay. So this population which resides in cities will require infrastructure support, such as housing, hospital, schools, buses for traveling, roads for traveling, right? Let's say drinking infrastructure, drinking water infrastructure, etc. And in order to provide this kind of an infrastructure, the governments will have to increase their expenditure, and will have to spend somewhere around $840 billion. Look at the mind-boggling number. Huge amount of expenditure is actually required. In fact, the report also states that between 2011 to 2017 and 18, hardly around 0.63% of the total expenditure, 0.63% has been incurred by the government in the form of capital expenditure. Again, where? In the cities. And this report argued that it should be increased to more than 1.2%. It should be increased to more than 1.2%, which basically means, again, some of you will ask me, sir, should I remember all of this data? If you can remember some amount of data, all of this data, I don't think so you'll be able to remember. It is slightly difficult. So in a nutshell, what the report states is very simple. You need to increase a lot of investments by 400%. The report states by 400% the investment in rural bodies, urban bodies must be increased, so that the sufficient infrastructure is made available. Sufficient infrastructure is available for the people who are residing in cities. And what is the situation of financing in the urban local bodies? According to Government of India's data, 75% of the total expenditure incurred by these bodies is basically either the central government assistance or state government assistance. Is it okay? Central government or state government assistance. Remaining amount of money, it is basically invested by the local bodies, by the municipalities, and there also they tend to borrow huge amount of money from the market. In that particular context itself, in order to promote infrastructure, there is a concept of municipal bodies which has been promoted by Reserve Bank of India in the context of municipalities. So argument is simple. You need lot of money to invest, develop infrastructure. You do not have sufficient amount of resources. Then what is the problem? Why you do not have sufficient resources? The local bodies, let's say the municipalities or the towns, generally get the funding from the central government, state governments. Under the Constitution of India, no doubt these are recognized constitutionally. The amendment of 73 as well as the 74th amendment have given the constitutional recognition to these. But the amount of funding that is, or let's say the dependence of funding from the center and states is very, very high, because the powers of receipt collection, powers of imposing and collecting receipts or the revenues is very limited for these bodies. So that is one point. Second point, because the dependence is very high, understand this, because the dependence, I'll write it, because of the dependence is very high from the center and state, funding from center as well as the state. Because the dependence is very high, now they need to go to the market and borrow from the market. The problem is when these local bodies such as municipalities go to the market and try to borrow from the market, for example, if they want to issue municipal bonds, they require very good credit rating. They need to have a positive net worth for certain specific previous number of years. They need to ensure that they have audited results. Only and only then they'll be able to raise money from the market. And that basically will hinder, or reduce the capacity of borrowing from the market. So borrowings is also limited here, or constraints are there in terms of borrowings. Third one is, sir, what about the resources? What about the powers which are given for them to raise the revenues or the collection of money? Property taxes are imposed and collected by the municipalities. No doubt, it is given to municipalities. But because of various issues, according to Government of India's report, the amount of property taxes collected by these municipalities is very, very low. Very, very low. If you compare this with other countries such as, let's say, Brazil or other developing countries, there the local bodies are able to generate a huge amount of property taxes. So the revenue collection through property taxes is very limited. It is very, very limited. So putting together all of these particular factors, now you will realize that there is very limited scope for these local bodies to invest such a huge amount of money, develop the infrastructure. Has the previous Finance Commission done anything regarding this? Yes. According to the Constitution of India, the states are supposed to set up state finance commissions. Many of the state governments have not done it. And in those states which have set up state finance commission, they have not accepted the recommendations, they have not implemented the recommendations. Because please remember this, Finance Commission, whatever recommendations they provide to the government, these are advisories in nature. So that's the reason in many of the states, the recommendations have not been implemented, and in many of the states, state finance commission have not been set up. And in addition to this, the 13th Finance Commission, I'll write here point number 4. The 13th Finance Commission made certain observation. What was the observation? The 13th Finance Commission stated that in these particular states that they have surveyed, the state government have set up certain local bodies. Certain bodies or certain authorities have been established by the state government. The 13th Finance Commission calls these as parallel authorities. Parallel authorities. Sir, any example of parallel authorities? For example, in many of the cities you must have seen, there are development authorities. There are slum clearance board authorities, etc. So these are parastatal authorities or the 13th FC calls this as parallel authorities. And what is the problem? The 13th FC says that because of these parallel authorities, there is overlap of functioning between the local government as well as local bodies as well as the parallel authorities. There is overlapping functioning. And because of this overlap functioning, lot of expenses or the finances of these local authorities or the local bodies is affected. So the performance of the local bodies, the financial revenues or the receipt collection possibility of the local authorities is affected with the presence of these parallel authorities. In fact, the 13th FC went a step ahead and stated that we should address this particular issue. If you want to ensure that the local bodies will perform well, we should be able to address this particular issue of overlapping functioning and these parallel authorities basically emasculating local governments both financially as well as operationally. So in the light of all of these particular issues, the article simply states that the 16th Finance Commission should take into consideration how many statutory towns are there in India. What is the population which is present in these particular towns? Because for that also you require the census data. And 2011 census data is available. 2021 it is yet to be conducted. That is generally after 10 years, 2021 I am saying for that. So the latest census data is not there. So the 16th Finance Commission should consider the number of statutory towns, other cities, villages, etc. and use all of this data to recommend, to basically give recommendations to ensure there is a sufficient amount of fund flows that are going to take place to the local bodies. Right, so this is the information discussed in the article provided here. Next article, more of let's say prelims based articles now. June GST collections. The article simply says that for the first time in the last 3 years, right, important points I'll tell you now. For the first time in the last 3 years, the amount of growth of GST in a month, year on year, I'll tell you the meaning of it. The growth in the GST collection in a particular month, year on year compared, it has fallen down and it is around 7.8%. It is less than 10% now, it is around 7.8%. Now you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by GST collected in a month compared year on year? Logic is simple here. The data gives you basically the amount of GST collection for the month of June. And when they say it is for the month of June, please understand, it is basically regarding the transactions, right? That is the value of transactions that have taken place in the month of May. And on these transactions, how much money you are able to collect. So the June data shows that you have collected 1.74 lakh crore rupees. But if you compare this data with the previous year's June, with the June of 2023, you will realize that the amount of, or let's say the growth in the GST is around 7.7%. It is around 7.7%, and that is the reason why the article says the growth rate in the GST revenue collection in the last 3 years in a month, year on year, has fallen down to 7.7%, or it has fallen down below 10%, it is 7.7%. And not just this, some of you will ask me, sir, what is the importance of this then? Is it relevant for UPSC? My dear, yes. Reason being, the GST, yesterday we have completed 7 years. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen those articles, or let's say you have checked out the Twitter notifications by the Ministry of Finance, etc. The Ministry of Finance in fact announced that the 1st of July will be celebrated as GST Day now, because we have completed 7 years of GST. But one more very important thing has happened. Monthly, understand this very carefully, monthly, the Finance Ministry used to provide details of how much is the GST collection in the previous month. So if you enter into the next month, that is, let's say hypothetically you will enter into August, and once you enter into August, on the 1st or 2nd of the August, the government will provide the details of how much was the GST revenue collected from for the previous month. And not just this, the government used to provide details of how much has been collected at the state, at the center, etc., etc. That is, dissected information used to be provided, and that is relevant and that is important. Why? For policy making. For policy making, that is important for the authorities as well as even for the planners in the market. For example, imagine you are operating a company, FMCG, fast moving consumer goods. In such a case, would you not want to identify which kind of the goods the demand is increasing? Is it this kind of a good or that kind of a good, or whether this industry where you're present, is the demand rising or going down? You will be able to understand that particular information looking at one point of data, that is GST data. So policy making for many of the private sector enterprises, the data of GST is required. And that is the reason monthly data was published by the government. For the last month as well as this month, Government of India officially, I repeat, Government of India officially has stopped publishing this data. That is one very important point mentioned in the article. Second very important point, the finance minister says with the implementation of GST, the households have been the biggest beneficiaries. I repeat, with the implementation of GST, the households have been the biggest beneficiaries. How is that possible? According to various surveys that have been conducted, the goods which we consume on day-to-day basis, the prices of these particular goods have come down with implementation of GST. Right? So that is the reason the finance minister says the biggest beneficiaries of GST is basically the households. And the third very important point, although the tax revenue collection, the growth rate is below 8%, many experts argue that this should not stop Government of India in implementing rationalization reforms. Government of India should go ahead and rationalize the GST, reduce the number of slabs, basically shift the goods from higher slab to a lower slab so that the burden on the common man will be reduced. So these are the three very important, let's say, points which have been mentioned in the article here. Please go through this. Next article, NIA gives consent to jailed Kashmiri leader, engineer Rashid, to take oath as Member of Parliament. Now, what is the issue all about? In the recently concluded Lok Sabha elections, there have been two candidates who contested even though they were there in the jails. And these two candidates have won the elections. They have basically won the elections. And because they have won the elections, now they have approached a High Court, specifically Mr. Rashid has approached the court, and they have requested that they should be allowed to take oath as a Member of Parliament. And the NIA, that is the agency, National Investigating Agency, has given the consent. They have given the submission to the court saying that they have no problems regarding Mr. Rashid taking the oath as a Member of Parliament. Right? The bail can be provided or other arrangements can be done. But more importantly, NIA has imposed, or it has stated that they would want certain conditions to be followed by Mr. Rashid. Again, don't worry about the conditions. And don't worry about when he will go to the, let's say, the parliament, when they will take the vote, when they will take the oath, etc. All of that is not relevant for civil services. What is relevant as far as I am concerned? As far as I am concerned is the constitutional provisions related to the article. The important constitutional provisions are the Article 99. Article 99 of Indian Constitution. It simply states that if an elected member has to take up the responsibilities as a Member of Parliament, has to start functioning as a Member of Parliament, he has to or she has to take oath in the presence of the President of India. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Please memorize this. This can be asked next year. If any elected representative, if they are elected before taking up the responsibility, before starting to work as a Member of Parliament, they will have to take the oath in the presence or in front of the President of India under Article 99. It's a mandate. Next one is Article 101. Article 101. Now this particular member, once they take the oath, they are jailed. They will have to go back to the prison now. So what about their functions? What about their responsibilities? Understand this very carefully. Under Article 101, subsection 4, if a Member of Parliament, either Member of the Parliament, remains absent, doesn't participate in the meetings of the House for continuously 60 days without prior permission, I repeat, without the prior permission, then the membership will be revoked. That is Article 101. And the third point regarding this is, the member, because now this particular person, after they take the oath, will have to be sent back to the prison. and I hope you understand this point. This is not the first time that such a thing is happening in India. Earlier also, one of the members of AAP who was elected to Rajya Sabha had to take a bail, go to Rajya Sabha, take the oath and again come back. So it's nothing new. Earlier events have been there. Earlier examples are there regarding the same thing. So 101, right, basically present the application. This member has to give an application to the Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House will pass it on to the Committee on Absence of Members. They will look into this application. Then this has to be put on voting on the floor of the House. So that is related to Article 101. Right, so these are the two very important articles of Constitution of India which talk about the members who are elected but are in jail. Will they be allowed to take the oath, right? Or what if they are not able to participate in the proceedings of the House, etc. In addition to this, I would recommend, remember one more point, that is Representations of the People's Act, RPA, Representations of the People's Act 1951. Specifically in this, Section 8, subsection 3. This talks about if a person, that is a member, if they are convicted, then what will happen? Right? This particular section basically says that if a member is convicted of an offense like this, although these particular two people are not yet convicted, if they are convicted of an offense and they are sent to jail now, they will lose their membership. Right? Their membership will be lost. So these are the three very important provisions related to the article which has been given. Please go through these three provisions. Next article, RBI, ASEAN to create platform for instant retail payments. What are the important points? Let's try and understand. When they say ASEAN, ASEAN is a group of 10 member countries. Right? So ASEAN is a grouping. Within ASEAN, there are 4 countries which have been identified, and RBI and these 4 member countries of ASEAN have signed an agreement. Which are the 4 member countries? The countries are Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines and Singapore. Reserve Bank of India, that is India, and these particular 4 countries, central bankers of these particular 4 countries have signed an agreement. That is basically related to a project called as Project Nexus. Project Nexus. Now what is this particular Project Nexus here? Let me explain to you. I'm pretty sure all of you have used UPI, Unified Payments Interface. If you have used UPI, you will agree to a fact that the transfer of money can be done within a second. Within second, almost 0 second they say. Within a second from one account to another account. You will scan and you will make a payment. You will take the mobile number and you will make the payment. These are fast payment systems, FPS, fast payment systems. Now within the countries, there are more than 70 countries as per the BIS report. BIS basically stands for Bank of International Settlement. India is a member of BIS. As per Bank of International Settlement, there are around 70 countries wherein fast payment systems are present. And within these particular countries, if the funds have to be transferred, almost instantaneously, the funds are getting transferred. But when you talk about cross-border transfers, cross-border payments, cross-border fund transfers, certain amount of time is taken, there is a delay. Now BIS wants to reduce it. To how much? BIS says if Project Nexus is implemented, it is expected to become operational by 2026, by the way. It is expected to become operational by 2026. If Project Nexus becomes operational as envisaged, as thought out right now, the cross-border transfers of the funds will be brought down, will be reduced to less than 60 seconds. It would be reduced to less than 60 seconds. Some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the use of it? My dear, fund transfers, if these are done at a very faster pace, the cost over a period of time will come down. Fund transfers at a very faster pace, quick fund transfers are always beneficial in the market, not just domestic market, even in the international market. So BIS has proposed a project, the Project Nexus, and those member countries which will become part of the Project Nexus can basically participate, and within these countries, Now the FPS, that is the fast payment systems of these individual countries, will be integrated, will be connected, and this will help us in transferring of the funds. Now some of you will ask, sir, but this is being done. India is entering into agreements with many countries. I read it. You also made a video earlier. UPI is available there, UPI is available here, etc., etc. You only told. Then what is the difference? The difference is here. Listen to me very carefully. India, or let's say RBI, individually enters into agreement with multiple countries. Now, from one country to another country, the systems will change. RBI as well as the other country, they will have to create a customized system to integrate the fast payment systems of these two countries. Rather than this, what if there is already an existing system? You basically become a member of it, and the moment you become a member of it, you can get access to the FPS of all the other countries which are part of the Project Nexus. That is, in a nutshell, it is like a plug and play model. There is an infrastructure that has been proposed, a system that has been proposed. Same system will be implemented across all these countries, and once the system is made operational, any new country becomes a part of the Project Nexus, immediately they will be able to get access and start transfer of funds to all the other countries which are part of Project Nexus. That is the benefit of the Project Nexus which has been proposed by Bank of International Settlement. Now, although certain points are given, I have highlighted them. Please go through this. One point that is missing is, and which UPSC might ask as a trick question, Indonesia. Please understand, the country Indonesia has been a part of the discussions. From the beginning, it has been part of the discussions. But Indonesia has not been a member country. It is not a member country as of now. It will continue to operate as a special observer. Please remember this. It will continue to operate as a special observer, because these kind of terms are used in the prelims examination. Indonesia as of now will continue to operate as a special observer. Done? So these are certain important points. Right now, the RBI, that is India, along with 4 countries, 5 are the founding members. Over a period of time, it will be opened up. Other member countries can also join. And this will help us in smoothening or increasing the pace of international fund transfers. Next article, CEPA, India wants South Korea to drop tariffs on certain items. Certain important points in the article. Whenever you come across trade agreements, India has signed multiple trade agreements, and it is negotiating with many countries in signing these trade agreements. Over a period of time, more than 10 such trade agreements have been signed by Government of India. One such trade agreement, mind you, is with Korea. That is obviously South Korea. Please don't ask me in the comment section, sir, you said Korea. Is it North Korea or South Korea? It has to be South Korea. So with Korea, we signed an agreement in 2009, CEPA. CEPA basically stands for Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, basic idea is this. You sign the trade agreement. Majorly, the trade agreements are in the form of free trade agreements. But there are certain trade agreements which will go beyond focusing only on the trade. Rather than promoting goods and services trade, they will focus on promotion of investment. They'll focus on protection of intellectual property rights, etc. So whenever the trade agreements will go beyond the scope of the trade, basically we'll call these as CEPA or SECA. India has signed multiple such agreements with many countries which can be classified as CEPA or SECA. For example, with South Korea, with UAE, with Australia, we are proposing that now, etc. Now, what is the issue here? One problem that has plagued India's trade agreements is that after signing the trade agreements, I repeat, after signing the trade agreements, the trade deficit that existed between India with other member country, that is the trading partner with whom we have signed the trade agreement, has widened. And that is exactly what has happened in the context of CEPA here. That is exactly what has happened. The data which is published here, you can have a look at it. Do not memorize it. Please do not memorize. It is of no use. Simply remember that after signing the trade agreement, if you make a comparison, what was the trade deficit that India had before signing and after signing, trade deficit has generally widened. And India, with many other countries with whom we have the free trade agreements, this has been a general experience. Now some of you will ask me, sir, why? Why is that after signing the trade agreement, other member countries are able to leverage the benefits we are not able to leverage? It happens because one, we are majorly focused on low value productions. Remember this. We are focused on low value productions, that is the goods which are of lower value. Whereas other countries with whom we have lot of these particular trade agreements, they are focused on high value products. So essentially, I was reading an editorial yesterday in Business Line. The author criticized the government of India. Again, don't worry about it. Author criticized government of India because government is generally focused on signing more and more trade agreements. The author was basically critical of the free trade agreements. Reason being, author says that because of these particular free trade agreements, we are simply becoming an assembler, not a producer. We are becoming an assembler. So whether it is true or not, that's immaterial in this particular context. So argument is, India is more focused on low value production. We produce high volumes, but low value. So we export this low value to the international market and we import high value products into India. That is one of the reasons why trade deficit generally widens. And apart from this, there are many other issues, such as increasing interest rates in India. That will reduce, that will basically increase the cost of the funding for the companies. The other issue could be skilled labor availability is not there in India. Other issue could be the trading partner is implementing more and more non-tariff barriers, etc., etc. So many issues are there. So article simply says that India has focused on this particular problem and says that the trade deficit has widened. I want to reduce the trade deficit. How can you reduce the trade deficit now? Government of India has given a list to the representatives from South Korea, and Government of India says reduce the tariffs on these products. Reduce the tariff so that I'll be able to export more and more, trade deficit can be bridged. Right, so this is in a nutshell what is given in the article. Related to trade, in the year 2020 there was a question asked. With reference to international trade of India at present, which of the following statements is or are correct? Again, understand, it was asked in the year 2020. India's merchandise exports are less than its merchandise imports. Obviously, yes. The amount of the imports that we do is much higher compared to exports of merchandise. So first statement is correct. Imports, India's imports of iron and steel, chemicals, fertilizers and machinery have decreased in recent years. Underline the term decreased. Do you think the amount of fertilizer that we are importing has actually decreased? Check the data. You will realize that the amount of fertilizers that we have imported has been very high. Right? So second statement is wrong. India's exports of services are more than its import of services. In case of services, please understand, we generally experience a trade surplus. In services, we experience a trade surplus. In merchandise, deficit. Overall, deficit. India suffers from an overall trade or current account deficit? Yes. So 1, 3 and 4. Before I go forward, here is a very interesting fact. Very recently, the current account data for the previous quarter was published. For the previous quarter was published by the authorities. And after many quarters, for the first time, India has registered a surplus in the current account. I repeat, after many quarters, for the first time, India has registered a surplus in the current account. Surplus in the current account. That was in fact there in the newspapers. So 1 is correct, 3 is correct, 4 is correct. Right option will be option D, 1, 3 and 4. The last article for today. Kozhikode secures City of Literature status at annual UCCN Conference held in Portugal. Now what is this UCCN? Please understand. UCCN stands for UNESCO Creative Cities Network. UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. The model, or let's say the concept of UCCN was introduced by UNESCO back in the year 2004. It was introduced back in the year 2004. And under this, if you take the context of India, basically the applications for these particular cities will go through Ministry of Culture. They will submit the application and UNESCO will identify these particular cities and declare them as UCCN, that is Creative Cities, or as a part of UCCN. There are 350 cities which have been identified under this initiative of UNESCO. And what is the use of this? What is the objective of identifying these particular cities? Understand this argument here. Under Sustainable Development Goals, there is a goal number 11, which focuses on the cities. And the goal number 11 basically states that we need to ensure there is a sustainable development as well as the growth as well experienced, inclusive growth experienced in these particular cities. And especially those particular cities which are associated with, let's say, folk culture, art, etc. Those particular cities must interact with each other, must share their experiences, have policies where the culture is protected as well as the city development also takes place. And the forum for that is basically UCCN, right? And the recent conference which is being held, right, in Portugal, Kozhikode has been declared as a city of literature. And one more city, have a look at this, Gwalior, right, has been declared as a city of music. But to be very precise here, are these the only two cities which have been identified and part of UCCN? Of course no. There are multiple cities from India itself which are already part of UCCN. And in a nutshell, the objective of UCCN is very simple. Have a look at this. The member cities will work together towards a common mission, that is placing culture and creativity at the heart of the urban development. There is no doubt we need to promote the development in these cities, but at the same point of time we need to protect the art and culture that is existing in these particular cities. That is in a nutshell the objective of UCCN, right? So these are the 8 very important articles as well as the concepts related to these 8 articles which have appeared in the international edition of 2nd July, The Hindu. If you like these initiatives, please hit the like button. And if you yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly subscribe now. And before I wind up the session, again a reminder, very important reminder for those who are appearing for the upcoming mains examination. Yesterday we have launched the Conquer Mains. The first session of that is already available on the YouTube channel. Second session today, which will be taken by Mukesh sir, will be available at 10 p.m. Please do not miss out on these particular initiatives. Thank you. Have a great day.